I think every midlifer I talked to played soccer as a kid in one way, shape, or form with like some league or group or at school or whatever. But like soccer in the 90s, that's like I think, experience we all have probably gone through.
Oh, yes. Hey, everyone, I'm Mike.
And I'm Andrew.
And we're the Midlife Guys. So, in case you've been living under a rock, we're in the throes of two major sporting events, the World Cup and summer baseball season. Tens of millions of midlifers from across the globe have been tuning into these games as they cheer on their favorite teams. Now, baseball has always had a strong base of support in the United States, given that it's our nation's pastime. However, according to a 2026 report, baseball has seen explosive growth outside of the United States in places like Japan, South Korea, Latin America, the Caribbean, and even in Europe. So while baseball has always had a lot of popularity in the United States, soccer hasn't always had that same experience, but that's growing too. Soccer, or football as the rest of the world calls it, has only grown in popularity over the past decade, fueled by, you guessed it, older millennials and midlifers. Older millennials and midlifers have had a great deal more international experience, having worked, studied, or just traveled abroad. And additionally, the 90s saw a huge expansion of youth soccer leagues, which has also been fueling that interest and growth. These things have resulted in just tremendous year-over-year growth in interest in soccer. What is particularly interesting about this year is that we've seen tectonic shifts in how midlifers are participating in both baseball and soccer. While football, American football, and basketball have and continue to dominate the realm of American fandom, soccer now ranks as the third most watched sport, followed closely by baseball. So, what has changed? Well, a lot. Back in 2013, viewership of baseball games was in the toilet. One MLB article called it the AARP crowd because only those 65 plus were watching baseball. And guess what? That same thing was true with soccer, not just here domestically, but internationally as well. Soccer has always been tremendously popular outside of the United States, but even the average age of the viewer then was over 55 years old. So today we're going to talk about how midlifers have helped breathe new life into these two sports and what that means for the future. Andrew, you ready to discuss this?
Oh, I'm ready. One quick thing though is the whole 90s like youth soccer thing was so true. I think every midlifer I talked to played soccer as a kid in one way, shape, or form with like some league or group or at school or whatever. But like soccer in the 90s, that's like I think, experience we all have probably gone through.
Oh, yes.
Yes. I know we both have, and literally every person I know who's our age has like did at least one season of some sort of like youth soccer, which is kind of interesting.
Mhm.
And then baseball, I love baseball. We'll talk more about this, I'm sure. When we talked about this topic of baseball and soccer, I had to come. If you can see, I got my Phillies shirt on. I love the Phillies. They're my favorite baseball team. So I am ready to talk about how awesome baseball and soccer are.
Awesome. Let's dive in.
All right.
So, where did this all start? Well, the answer is simple enough. According to a June 2026 study from Pew Research, 1985 was a pivotal year for families across the globe. This was the year where we began seeing a huge increase in households with two working parents. In fact, there was a 31% increase in households with two full-time working parents. This doesn't include the households where the mom was working part-time because that makes the number even larger. With all of these parents in the workforce, what were the kids going to do when they weren't in school? Youth sports. Project Play, which is part of the Aspen Institute, has been tracking this for a while now, but there have been ebbs and flows related to youth sports. participation over the years. That 1985 to 1997 timeframe was very important in the youth sports world as more and more parents turned to youth soccer, baseball, basketball, and football leagues to help manage their kids, especially get them out of the house. Now, that did start dropping off in 1997 when desktop computers became more available in households. That number kind of fell off a cliff. Parents started prioritizing more time in the realm of computer science. As younger Generation X and older millennials started having kids of their own, participation in youth sports began to climb again. In 2008, you had about a 45% global participation rate in youth sports. In 2022, that number had sunk to 37%, but that was driven mainly by COVID.
As so many
Today,
things were.
as so many things were, unfortunately. Today, 58% of young people play or participate in youth sports programs, and that number is expected to hit 63% by 2030.
Nice.
Yeah, that's great. What does that mean for professional soccer and baseball? Well, simply put, parents have influenced their children to love these sports through the participation of youth sports leagues. That has added rocket fuel to organizations like the MLB and FIFA because their fastest growing fan base are youth under the age of 15. Very exciting.
It is, yeah.
Parents who have fond memories of their days playing in the youth sports league are now sharing this passion with their kids, all while rooting for their favorite professional teams. Does this sound familiar, Andrew?
Oh, it sounds very familiar. Yes. I mean, I think that all sounds pretty much like what, you know, I went through, and my wife and I, we talk about like getting the kids involved in stuff, sports. We both did as kids. And so that's naturally a thing to do for them as well. Before I talk about sports participation, though, in my mind, I kind of differentiate between participation and fandom, which sometimes can overlap, but at least in our household, as I mentioned earlier, I've got my Phillies shirt on. I'm from the Philadelphia area. So, like all good Philadelphians, I am a big fan of our local sports teams. And although I don't live in the Philadelphia area anymore, still a huge Phillies, Eagles, Flyers, 76ers fan, and have pretty much not given my children any choice as to what teams that they'll be rooting for at the professional level, at least where there is a Philadelphia team. Now, luckily, my wife also has connections to the area, makes it to Philadelphia, which makes that a little bit easier. Also, the city we live in, Mike, doesn't have a professional sports team. We have a minor league baseball team, which is great. And I think that helps a little bit too. Like I could understand if we lived in a big city that had pro teams, the kids might want to root for them. But fortunately, my boys have been indoctrinated correctly into Philadelphia sports fandom. And I'm really happy about that for them. Not really, because being a Philadelphia sports fan actually can be pretty depressing sometimes. But I'm glad that we're at least right now all on the same page about rooting for the same teams. And although I definitely put my thumb on the scale when it came to which teams you're going to root for professionally, I will say we did give a lot more leeway in terms of what sports they wanted to get into. So kind of the rule we have in my house, or my wife and I have with our kids, is that we want them to do one sport a season. So a couple times a year, do a different sport, because there are lots of benefits, I think, to youth sports, from, staying active to learning teamwork and building friendships, learning how to overcome challenges, kind of pushing yourself, all that good stuff that I think sports can help kids with. But really, we also wanted them to try a bunch of different sports and see what they were most interested in. So they've tried all sorts of sports, and the ones they keep coming back to are baseball, soccer, and basketball. Although there's three, I think baseball has sort of moved to the front of the field. It's something my boys, who are 9 and almost 6, are both just love baseball right now, which is kind of cool to see, and sort of aligns with some of what you were saying, Mike, about the growth, especially among younger kids, into baseball. They also do play soccer. They like that. They're really jazzed about soccer because of the World Cup. We've been watching lots of World Cup games, which they've really enjoyed. So I think that's, again, kind of aligning with the interest kind of peaking there. But I'd say their passion right now really is baseball, which I find interesting. And I'm also, if I'm being honest, like really happy about because I grew up playing baseball and I remember playing baseball with my dad and my brother, and it was nostalgia and great. And I love experiencing them kind of coming to the game as well and how they're playing with it. And like we'll play baseball in the backyard together. And it's always because they're asking me to come play with them, which makes me very happy. And it's like one of my favorite things is to play baseball with them. But it is kind of cool. I think it does align with what you were saying about sort of my experience growing up. And then when our kids get into sports, and it's been nice seeing them kind of line up with wanting to do baseball in particular, because that's what I remember doing as a kid. But I think there is a balance too of we don't want to force them into like they have to do a particular sport. Like let them take the lead has worked really well for us. And maybe their interests change in a couple years. I don't know. And there's another sport that they pick up. But I think if you let your kids kind of take the lead on it, then they'll be more interested and committed to it long term. So that's what we're doing. And it's been fortunate that it's worked out for baseball, which again, I love because that's what I grew up doing too.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah,
And it's great seeing you play with your boys, although
it is.
it's also 100 degrees today. So,
Well, yeah, today it's
not
been
the
like,
best day to
no,
play baseball outside.
we'll go out for like 10 minutes. I'm like, okay, and we're done. Like that's
Mhm.
all we can take. Yeah.
So, I had a lot of fun doing research for this episode because I've always suspected that the increase in or the participation in youth sports was driving soccer and uh, baseball fandom. But the I didn't have any numbers to prove it, but apparently,
Yeah.
um, I was right. So
Yeah.
I did use soccer for years, but I also remember that options were very limited back then. It was the YMCA, which was the biggest driver of youth sports leagues in the area that I grew up in. There's nothing wrong with the Y, but nowadays there are
Yeah.
dozens upon dozens of
It feels like it's
soccer and
exploded. Yeah.
baseball. Yeah. These things just didn't exist back then. So I think that's great. And I look at who runs these leagues and these organizations. It does tend to be younger Gen X and older millennials, and I think that's great.
Yeah.
This data just demonstrated to me that it's been driven by demographic nostalgia, essentially doing these sports as a kid and then sharing the same experience with their kids, kind of what you alluded to. Um, so it only makes sense that this translates into larger support for the professional side of things. And the numbers bear that out. We have the 40 to 50-year-old crowds at the highest rates of viewership of these games or matches, as well as that 5 to 15 crowd. So that's very
Yeah.
exciting
What
for
I think you
soccer
bring up
and
a
baseball.
yeah, good point too. And this is definitely true. I think, well, for both actually for soccer, baseball, basketball, football, I'm trying to think of ones that I have familiarity with our kids. But I think what's interesting now versus when we were kids, and this is probably again to your point, driven by I guess our generation to some extent. It's just like the number of options you have too, and like different levels of stuff. Like I mean, you can do like your local school or local little league for baseball, or you can get super intense if you want to and do, hardcore travel teams that go across the country at young ages. I mean, we have
Hmm.
friends that have a daughter who loves baseball and they're 8, 9 year olds and they were in Boston for a tournament recently. So like you can really go really deep with each of these sports. I know we have friends who've got kids in football and basketball that kind of do the same thing. So I think that's kind of been something that I feel like our generation's probably, I know for better or worse, has changed in regards of like there's just so many more leagues and types of things that you can do with kids.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. What's happening at these games themselves? Well, according to the MLB, the ages are finally getting younger in attendance. In fact, the average age at MLB games has dropped by 5 years in the past few years, as that 5 to 15 demographic starts attending more games with their parents. Right now, the average age is about 41 years old. Well, guess what? The same is true with soccer, according to both Major League Soccer here in the United States and FIFA globally. That's also around 41 years old. So, both baseball games and soccer matches are now becoming family events, which is driving the
Yeah.
median age down. Counter that with other sports in the US, which the median age is actually rising. In February 2026, the Darden School of Business at the University of Virginia analyzed viewing data of the Super Bowl and NFL games from this past year, and it's showing signs of trouble ahead
Mm.
for the NFL. The average viewer and attendees is getting older and grayer. Could this spell a new paradigm shift in sports in the United States? Well, quite frankly, it's too early to tell, but as more and more parents shy away from youth football, probably a good decision, and as the games have become increasingly expensive to attend, there might be some changes in the future. Samford University tried to study this shift as well and found that midlifers and their children are attending football games. They're just attending more college football games, not professional NFL games. The cost to go to college games is not nearly as high. Neither are the concession
Yeah,
prices. And it's just easier to make college games a more family
right,
friendly
right.
function. So,
NFL
Andrew,
games
I'm just.
are insanely expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Um, no, I mean, I think, well, real quick before I jump in, I do want to say, I think my favorite part of all of the data that you shared was those researchers who were calling 41 a young median age. That made me feel good for a minute there. I was like, all right, we're still
Mm-hmm.
young in the
Mm-hmm.
grand
We
scheme
are.
of things.
We are.
We're on the younger side. It is interesting though, how, baseball and soccer, that kind of age is dropping down, and football, it's not. And I think still, as you said, it's a little bit too early to tell. I mean, football is still, like, I think a cultural juggernaut. At least American football is in the United States. I think it's kind of hard to, you know, to not recognize that. But it's interesting the trends that are happening with baseball and soccer. And again, from my experience with our kids and other midlifers who have kids, is I can only think of two other families that have boys that are roughly my older son's age who are doing, no, three other families, but out of dozens that are doing, like, their kids do youth football, because there definitely is, I think, a lot more hesitation to go in that direction. I think there are probably lots of reasons for that. Some of it's probably safety issues or all the stuff around, like, concussions that we know when we were growing up, and kind of had friends that had gone through that or seen that, or the data that's come out more recently. Also, just it's not just like going to NFL games are expensive, but just the equipment that
The
goes along with
equipment is
being a
the
football
big
player
thing. Yeah.
is absurd. I was talking to a midlifer friend who we have who's got two kids playing football, and they were telling us about, like, how much it costs to not just, like, sign up for the league, but you have to buy all the pads, all the uniforms, the helmet, all this
Helmet.
other
Yeah.
stuff. It is just like thousands of dollars just for the equipment, which that's, I mean, that's going to be cost prohibitive for lots of people, and I think rightly so. Um, Now, granted, I also know some parents who will buy a $300 baseball bat for their kid, which is a bit crazy in my mind. But you can also get, baseball equipment that's not nearly as expensive. So I think that's one of the things about baseball that I feel like is why it's probably growing in popularity, especially among younger people and folks with families, is because it is more accessible. I think it's accessible from a cost standpoint. So, like, the equipment and the fees typically aren't as expensive as other sports. You also, if you think about it, you can go experience baseball in a lot of different ways. I mean, it's a long season, so it's pretty much most of the spring, all of the summer, into the fall. And you can go see little league games, high school games, college games, the minor league, the major leagues. Like, there's just lots of different ways, I think, to experience baseball. The other thing too is that I think baseball has become, or at least the baseball that we'll go to, this is especially true at the minor league, I think has become a little bit more family friendly and, like, kid entertainment focused. Like, this is true in some major league games, but especially in the minors. Um, if you go to those games, which I know we've both been to minor league games in our area, like, half the time they're just doing cool skits and stuff for, like, the kids, like, in between innings and as other stuff's going on. So I think that's another way that baseball has sort of experimented and been trying to find ways to be more entertainment or have other things going on around or during the game to help keep kids interested and involved. I know some baseball purists are not a fan of some changes they've made recently. They're shortened the games, but those games a couple years ago were going 3+ hours consistently, major league games, and that was hard for even adults to sometimes, like, keep up with. And there's been studies showing that pitch clocks and other things that they put in place, and, like, the number of relievers you can put in and whatnot. Like a lot of that has brought down the length of the game, which again, I think makes it a little bit more accessible. Whereas baseball games now feel like they're getting shorter. Football games feel like they get longer and longer because of all the extra breaks and stuff that they're doing, which again, I think probably impacts, how interested kids are in it. Another thing too that I think culturally has been kind of interesting about baseball, and I've certainly experienced or seen through my kids, is the whole banana bowl phenomenon. So
Mm-hmm.
obviously the Savannah Bananas, it's not real baseball. It's like a Harlem Globetrotters version of baseball, but it's still really fun. And like my boys love watching that and they get a kick out of it. And what's nice is I think it's because it's become so popular, it's opening up a lot of people who maybe wouldn't otherwise be interested in baseball to kind of like as an entry point to be like, oh, this is kind of fun and cool. And maybe I'll go see an actual baseball game, or maybe I'll kind of get more interested in the minor league or the major league or whatever it is. So I do think there's these sort of these cultural things that are happening around baseball too that's helping make it be a lot more interest. And to your point, as you said in the beginning too, I just think a lot of it does come down to cost too. We've taken our boys to a couple of major league baseball games, and it's not a cheap experience, but we've never taken them to an NFL game because it's just so like insanely expensive to get tickets and then concessions and everything else. And like, I mean, I'm 42. I've actually never been to an NFL game. I don't know if you have, Mike. Have you ever gone to an
Yes.
NFL in person? Okay, I never have, just because growing up, we just never really we watched it on TV. Like I like watching football on TV, but even now, it's hard for me to be like justify all the amount of money it would take to like go somewhere to get a good seat to like really enjoy the game. It is kind of wild.
Yes. The last time I've been to a few Washington
Okay,
um,
makes sense. Yeah.
games, and the last time I was invited, it was a corporate event to a box. So
Oh, well,
yeah,
that sounds very nice then.
that's the
I would
only
do
reason
that.
that's the only reason I went.
I need someone with a box to invite me. That I would totally do.
Yeah, because that goddamn game dragged on forever because of all the
It,
commercial timeouts. The games, yeah,
it
it's
does.
becoming
Yeah.
not that fun of an experience. But you're
Yeah.
right, and I think you know, uh, baseball can drag out. And it can have its very low points of being boring as shit.
Yeah.
But they have created um, mechanisms in which to, make it entertaining for everyone in the stands or everyone
Yeah.
participating. So I think that's really helped. Um,
And
I
something I
do
think
think.
is cool. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I
Go
was going to
ahead.
say that's cool about baseball stadiums. And I don't know this to be a fact for all the football ones, but at least every MLB stadium I've been to, they have like a kid zone too. So like if the game does drag out, it's like a pitching duel. Like you can take your kids to like another part and they can like play on a playground and you can still kind of watch the game, which I'm not familiar with like basketball or football or other kind of pro sports things having like a dedicated like kids area, which I think just goes back to the point of like baseball trying to make it more family friendly.
Not at the professional leagues. I
Not
mean,
that I
yet
can think
again, when
of.
we
Yeah.
go to our universities' football games, of course, they
Right.
have
They
kid
have a kids
zones and stuff
area.
like,
Yeah.
and that's great. And I think it's when you're 5 years old, you only have but so much
Yes, that's true.
attention to has attention span. So having those escapes for parents, I think, is important.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's great. And I do take your point about the expense related to some other sports, especially youth leagues. Football is incredibly expensive. Lacrosse
Yeah.
can be very expensive
That's
too.
it with lots of equipment again. Yeah.
It's lots of equipment. I mean, baseball and soccer just have much lower expense thresholds.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that adds um, interest among parents who may not have the resources to buy thousands upon thousands of dollars of equipment.
And if you're not sure
So
your kid's gonna get into it either, right? Like, I'm not gonna spend a bunch of money on something my kid halfway through is gonna be like, I don't know how much I actually like this. Like, it's a much bigger upfront investment.
correct, correct.
Mm.
So, I think that this is great that parents are sharing this experience at both baseball and soccer matches with their kids. Um, Athletics/sports, especially team sports, are designed to bring people together. I know that's not always been the case, and in a lot of cases, athletics can cause tension, but that's more of a cultural problem than it
I
is
think,
related to
yeah.
the sport itself. Um, if parents and their kids can unite in their love for a particular team, I think that's excellent. So, all right. This is all going to be personal now. So the final
Oh,
thing was just to share our personal perspectives. What do soccer and baseball mean to us? More importantly, what do they mean to you, our listeners? We want to hear from you about these findings. And are you part of that growing crowd of midlifers who are going to baseball games and soccer matches with your family? Are youth sports influencing that? Andrew, what do soccer and baseball mean to you? You shared a little bit, but go for it.
yeah. I mean, it's going to come as a surprise that I love youth sports and baseball and soccer and sports more generally. Yeah, I mean, I think I what I experienced as a kid, what I'm now seeing through kind of my boys' experiences is that what's so wonderful about youth sports is that it really does, I think, help develop a young person. It teaches you really valuable skills about teamwork and working with others, kind of working through conflicts, figuring out like where your spot on the team is. And also that's not, especially with baseball and soccer and team sports, like it's not all about you. You're part of a bigger picture and a bigger piece. Um, I think it also helps teaches kids about resiliency and like you're going to have challenges. You're not always going to win. So how do you handle defeat and kind of work through that? I think that's incredibly valuable lessons. It also helps just keep you active, which is incredibly important as well. We talked a lot in previous episodes about sort of kids and midlifers who sort of are gonna become addicted to technology and sort of like sitting alone by themselves, like in a dark room. And I think sports really kind of forces you out of that paradigm. And I think a lot of those reasons are also why, and we've talked about this before too, Mike, that midlifers like our age, like sports leagues are kind of on a rebound for folks in their, 40s and 50s too, because we either miss that or still want to have that be a part of our lives, which I think just kind of reinforces the value of sports and of youth sports too. And, the one thing though that when I think about sports, you sort of you hinted on this a minute ago, is that it really I think does bring people together. Yes, sometimes there can be tensions and rivalries, or sometimes I've been at many youth sports events where some parents, go off or take things too seriously or living vicariously through their children. I mean, luckily it doesn't happen a ton. It's just like, don't be an asshole and it'll be fine. But it's more
Mm-hmm.
that's the
That,
parents' fault. It's not
that's
the
the
kid or
parents' fault, and
it's
yet
the
again, it's
sports
a
league's fault.
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
parent thing. It's a
Yeah.
cultural thing.
It is. But what I do think sports does, and the World Cup actually has been a really great example of this, is it does bring people together in a way that I think few other things do. You know, our family was in New York recently on vacation, and we were there during one of the World Cup games, kind of just accidentally happened to be there. Hadn't planned to be there during the World Cup, but we're there. And it was really cool. We were there when, at the very beginning of the World Cup, when Brazil played Morocco, and it was cool seeing tons of people in Brazil and Morocco jerseys and like they were all having a good time together too. It wasn't like they were angry, like we went to lots of touristy places and everybody was just like having a big party basically or enjoying themselves and all happy to be in the same place. And I think that's what sports really can do. It does bring people together to either, unify around a shared goal or team wanting to be successful or just being excited about the competition that's happening. And I think that's been really cool to see. And I know you and I've talked just offline about sort of the death of like the monoculture, or that there we've all become so fragmented, right? It's like hard to have shared reality with other people. Whereas I think sports is one of the last places, maybe the only last place where tons of different people from lots of different backgrounds kind of can come together and all be together and experience something together. And I think that's awesome. And I feel like it's very rare anymore in today's society. So I think
I
that's
would
great too.
I would
Yeah.
100% agree. 100% agree. Um,
But what do you think? What are you sports? What do they mean to you?
yeah, I mean, yet again, I don't have kids, but I do come watch your son's youth sports leagues,
Yeah.
and then I've got friends, of course, that I cheer them on. There are their kids as well. Um, as I mentioned earlier, I had YMCA soccer
Yeah.
youth leagues that I participated in when I was younger. Um, so that was great, and that was a great experience. And my parents were there to cheer me on during those games. It was, from a professional standpoint, as you mentioned, we don't have a professional sports team here.
Yeah.
So that was always a little challenging. Because there were times when you didn't have much of anything nearby. So it's that wasn't like as big a driver for me,
Mm-hmm.
um, just because you know f- family and even friends of family didn't have any unified sports teams that they were cheering on. But you know, one of the things that my school required is after school athletics. And so
Oh, that's interesting.
you
Hmm.
had to join a athletics team um, per season. So,
Right.
fall, winter, spring. And I think that was an excellent way in which to bring the everyone together.
Hmm.
Yet again, you know, that's what team sports does. It builds friendships, it builds
Yeah.
understanding for one another, it builds teamwork, and I think that was a really good part of the equation since you had to do it. And so, and yet again, I think I think youth sports is definitely an excellent way in which to um, learn about the world, meet new friends, learn about the world.
Sure, yeah.
There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs, there's going to be really fun people, and they're going to be assholes. Um, and you just gotta, youth sports is a great way to start learning those lessons from an early age.
It's literally a microcosm of the world. It's just
It
like
really
that's
is. It really
life.
is.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. So we've
Cool.
blown through another 30 minutes. If you've not done so already, please like and subscribe. It doesn't cost you a thing, but it helps us out a lot. Remember that you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartMedia, and all your favorite podcasting platforms. And until next week, good luck, guys.
Go Phillies.